Hello and welcome back to Freaky Friday with Johnny Tiger on October 22nd, 2021. I really tried. I really tried hard to get Toy Thursday out as I promised, but and then we were uh, making dinner, eating dinner, and then trying to get a nice strike self-defense workout and doing laundry. There was a lot to do as is usually the case after you spend a couple of days away from the house. So by the time I checked the time, it's past midnight. I'm still up, and I'm very determined to knock this out of the park before I lay down and go to bed. But alas, it is Friday. It's past midnight. So this will be Freaky Friday, but we are still going to see an action figure, a freaky action figure. Doing our Halloween season series, today let's talk about pumpkins. You know, I had no idea what pumpkins were until I came to Canada when I was about 9 years old, eight and a half, 9 years old, in 1989 when I came to Canada. Prior to that, I had no knowledge of what pumpkins even look like or taste like or what they were about. I might have heard mention of it in stories, but even then, it was really, really rare. So I carved my first pumpkin in the fall of 1989 as part of the school project, and I thought it was very disgusting. You can imagine someone like me who was pampered and spoiled and had nothing to do with anything in the kitchen other than eat what I was given. Um, Having to take up a knife and learn how to make that first cut on a pumpkin, and then gradually get to the inside and dig out all that slimy seed and smell what it smelled like on the inside of the pumpkin for the first time. Yeah, it was very disturbing, disgusting, revolting. I had no fondness of that first encounter with the pumpkin. Now, luckily, pretty soon after I got the knack of it, I've always been very artistic as a child, and I got down to business and carving. And then I gradually realized that pumpkins are not just for carving, they can be quite tasty. Pumpkin pies and pumpkin soup, those seeds that you dig out of the pumpkin, if you throw them all in a big skillet and fry them up with butter, they're delicious. So my opinion of pumpkins improved. About 5 years ago, so approximately 2017, 2018, I even got a little bit of a notoriety. I sat down and carved a pumpkin without any forethought or planning. There was a pumpkin, there was a knife, and I just sat down and carved it, and then stuck it on a fence post at my ex-girlfriend's house. And next day, it appeared in the local newspaper, and it was uh, voted in as the most creative pumpkin of the year and the best carved pumpkin of the year. Um, that was kind of unexpected and a lot of fun. Now, I do have a pumpkin monster action figure, surprisingly enough, uh, but I can't show it today. It's sitting in a big pile of boxes waiting to be opened and reviewed and cataloged. I'm kind of really, really backlogged on opening and assembling and reviewing my, I can't even say new action figures because some of them have been sitting in the boxes for the last 2 years. Uh, So yeah, it's there somewhere. But luckily, I do have another uh, character, action figure that perfectly suit the scene that we are working with, and it also has something to do with pumpkins. Last week, we looked at a movie monster or the imagined movie monster because no one really actually saw what the Blair Witch is supposed to look like. So it was purely imaginative on the part of the toy maker Todd McFarlane. This week we are looking at yet another Todd McFarlane creation, but this time he didn't imagine it. This time it's quite faithful to this monster's movie counterpart. Let me take you back to 1988 when this movie first came out. And yes, there were a few sequels, and from what I heard, they're not even worth watching. They were horrible, but the first one was relatively good for its time. I don't remember much watching it the first time because watching it the first time was 1990, I believe, and it came on as one of the Halloween special. There was no description. No one was kind enough to describe the movie for me. I just was there in the corner while my siblings and stepmother were watching it and hear them go ooh ah about all the uh, interesting, exciting scene, and while I have no idea what was going on, I knew they were watching Pumpkinhead. I knew there were a lot of people dying. I knew there was a monster in there. That was that. Those were not some of the better times of my life. So uh, wasn't able to enjoy the movie. However, on a more positive note, after I became an adult and lived on my own, I did hunt down that movie because I acquired this action figure. So I wanted to watch the movie it originated from. So as I said, the movie came out in 1988. It was a very simple story, really. A child was killed in an accident by a bunch of very irresponsible teenagers who were out there in the woods getting drunk, getting high, and causing trouble. You know, the generic annoying teenagers that you see in almost every horror movie, slasher movie, monster movie. The kind of teenagers that you watch them and you're like, it's going to be so good when you get killed. At least that's what I think when I look at these characters. Anyway, my my darker nature aside, the child got killed by one of these teenagers in an accident. So the child's father went to an old witch who lived in the woods and tried to get the witch to revive his son. When the witch told him that his son was beyond help, the father, in his grief and hatred, went and, with the help of the witch, summoned a demon of vengeance. And once summoned, this demon of vengeance would hunt down and kill everyone who offended the person who summoned it in the most gruesome and painful way. This horrible, nearly unstoppable, uh, gruesome, demonic creature who was basically the main star of the show. Its name was the name of the movie, and it was Pumpkinhead. Made by Todd McFarlane in his movie Maniac line, Pumpkinhead was, to its time, the largest action figure made in the movie Maniacs series, standing over 8 inches tall and quite a large figure in both heft and width of the body. It embodies the demon of vengeance quite perfectly. And from what I've heard, it's very faithful to what he looked like on screen. As a demon, Pumpkinhead would hunt down people who uh, had wronged the summoner. In essence, Pumpkinhead embodies the hatred uh, in the heart of its summoner. The only way to defeat Pumpkinhead to get it to go back to hell is to kill the summoner or summoners because it can sometimes be summoned by more than one person. If there's more than one summoner, uh, depending on the amount of people that summoning the demon get bigger and bigger. So the pumpkin head that summoned by one person would be a lot smaller than, say, the pumpkin head summoned by 10 people. Why is the creature called pumpkin head? Well, it's kind of silly because it has a really big head, and the first time you saw it being summoned, it was in a pumpkin patch. So it took on the silly name of pumpkin head. Uh, but there's nothing silly or goofy about the creature whatsoever. It is a horrifically designed monster for a monster movie. And what's very interesting that in its favor is that it doesn't use your very traditional format. I mean, in 1988, a lot of the time when we think about monsters. We're thinking about Frankenstein or Dracula or the sea creature or lake monster or Bigfoot or zombies or the mummy. So Pumpkinhead was something brand new, something original, something that doesn't build on the fame and notoriety already established by these other traditional monster movies. Pumpkinhead looks very bestial, animalistic. He has a tall, kind of skeletal looking, scaly, uh, corpse like body with powerful hind legs. The legs look very strong and it's generally bigger than the torso and quite muscular. It also sports a very long tail. On this action figure, the tail has bendy wires inside, allowing you to pose the tail in several different poses. But you do have to be careful. It is an old action figure. Sometimes the wire inside the tail may break, so be gentle with it. Going out from the tail, we can see a very bony physique. You can see the spine and a very protruding set of shoulder blades at the top. What's interesting is at the shoulder blade area, there's a pair of like bony knobs that poke out from the body, almost like this creature was meant to have wings. And from what I understand in the later movies, Pumpkinhead did acquire a pair of wings. So maybe these are uh, uh, vestigial wings that just not fully grown yet on its shoulder blade. On the side of the pelvis and also at the back of the lower leg, there are also these bony protrusions that look like the monster was just waiting to grow outward with new scary configurations or body parts that haven't quite formed yet. Turning him around, we can see that Pumpkinhead has three toes on its feet, and the legs bend back like the legs on animals, like maybe a dog or some kind of a wild beast. Going out from the very muscular looking legs, again, we have that very wrinkly, desiccated looking corpse like physique with rib cage showing and long, gangly arms ending in giant, wicked looking claws. Most of this creature is shaded in a dark brown and yellowish color, and I was told that the coloration is the paint is quite well done. The head is skull-like and yes, quite large, and has some kind of a bumpy, lumpy texture on the skull. There's no nose to speak of, just a pair of nostrils that blend into the folds and wrinkles in this horrifying face of the demon. It has a large mouth with a lot of teeth, and most notable, a pair of bigger fangs that jut up from its lower jaw. Originally, I think there was a plan to make the jaw on this action figure articulated so you can open and close its mouth, but that was scrapped in the final product. This action figure is articulated at the waist, hips, shoulders, and wrists. Now, this may sound like it's not very articulated, not a lot of joints, and yeah, it doesn't have a lot of joints. But the advantage Pumpkinhead has, it's a big scary monster, right? It doesn't need to get into any kind of kung fu poses or martial arts stance or uh, splits or somersaults. It just needs to loom over your other action figures while reaching out with its giant claw, ripping them apart. So it actually has enough articulation to accomplish that. The body can swivel left or look to the right, and then the arms can reach up like it's ready to pounce down on some poor, defenseless action figures. The articulation in the hip allows the monster to lean forward while reaching down with its long arm to scoop up action figures that think that they can just duck under it. Since the shoulders are mounted on ball joints, the figure is able to spread its arms super wide, and believe me, with long arms like that, it has a really impressive side to side arm span. So it can look like it's spreading its arm wide, ready to charge in and grab up any unfortunate victims. So yeah, there's not a lot of joints, but what's there really work in favor of this horrific monster. As I mentioned, Pumpkinhead is summoned by people who have some grievous atrocity or wrong done towards them, and these people feel such intense hatred that they want to summon the demon of vengeance to help them find satisfaction. I'm pretty sure that almost every one of us, somewhere, sometime in our life, have had things done to us or said to us that make us so mad, and yet there's nothing we can do about it because either the position we had in life or the situation, the circumstances we found ourselves in. That if someone was to walk up to us and say, "Hey, I know this uh, demon, and you can summon, and it will do anything you say, and it will go." Wreak havoc on whoever that you are really mad at this moment with no consequences to you whatsoever. I think those of us with a little bit of a weaker moral, weaker mind may just go along with that. Now, of course, summoning Pumpkinhead does have consequences. Uh, Chiefly, the victims who want to stop this demon would have to try to kill you, because the only way to stop Pumpkinhead is to kill the summoner. So you kind of bring trouble on yourself. Also, the summoner will always feel the pain and anguish of the victims when Pumpkinhead kill them, and it will see the victims like uh, there was like you are seeing through the demon's own eyes. So um, there are consequences. So don't go out and try to summon Pumpkinhead tonight. It's not quite as uh, baggage free as the witch made it sound to be. For size comparison, we have Agent Nick Fury from the Marvel Cinematic Universe action figure standing next to Pumpkinhead. Nick Fury is a well, what you would usually say as a really well built, normal sized human being, about 6 foot tall, I would think, and pretty buff and fit. But next to Pumpkinhead, Nick Fury looks like a child. The top of his head barely reaches the monster's armpit. And yeah, uh, no matter if it's in girth or height, Nick Fury as a human just doesn't stack up against this gigantic demon of vengeance. So this gives you guys an idea how scary it would be to have this demon come after you in the dark. With a little bit of careful posing and creative fiddling, you can even get Pumpkinhead to hold a 6-inch action figure in one hand. Just grab them by the neck and lift them up in the air, like what we have now, with the Pumpkinhead holding up Agent Nick Fury, about to snap his neck. Or he can hold Nick Fury up with one hand holding Nick Fury by the head and the other hand by the ankle, lifting him overhead, either ready to tear him in half or throw him across the room. Or Pumpkinhead can even use his powerful tail to grab Nick Fury around the neck and strangle him in a very gruesome fashion. As you can see, this is a very versatile, big demonic action figure that can interact really, really well with other 6 or 7 inch action figures. Whether you are a fan of Pumpkinhead or if you just want another giant, gruesome, scary monster or demon on your shelf or looming in the background, maybe you're building an army of demonic creatures. Pumpkinhead is just very, very well suited for all kind of purposes, as villains or as monsters and other display options with your other characters. Now, when this Pumpkinhead was released, it was the only action figure of Pumpkinhead ever made. However, later in, I believe 2003, another company called SOTA, who sadly is no longer around, SOTA made a gigantic Pumpkinhead action figure. I believe it was like 18 inches tall or something. I am so uh, regretful that I never got my hand on it because I would love to have a giant version of Pumpkinhead in my collection. But uh, my regret aside, I am very happy to have acquired this. And guess what? This Pumpkinhead, who is so big and so well detailed and such a versatile monster, back then when he was released by Todd McFarlane in the early 2000s, late 90s, only costed somewhere like $10. $10 because something like this in the early 2000s. Isn't that crazy? Nowadays, for a figure like Nick Fury, who's only 6 inches tall, and a generic, very generic human action figure, you have to pay $30. This is how much the price of action figures has gone up now. That is very, very depressing. Anyway, all that aside, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little review showcasing one of the classic uh, monsters that not many people have heard of. If you have not, then I suggest checking out the Pumpkinhead movies. Just watch the first one. You can ignore all the other ones there. All the later ones really sucked. Just watch the first one. And, it's not like a fantastic, fantastic movie, but it's uh, enough of a classic that it's worth watching. Thank you again, and we'll be back later today with Fitness Friday with Kitten.